Captain Minji walked slowly into the massive council chamber. Her black uniform carried the Earth Defense Force symbol on her chest. The room was so big that her footsteps echoed off the walls. Above her, 12 different alien species sat in a circle looking down at her like judges. She had never felt so alone in her life. The Zephyrian Chancellor stood up first. His body looked like it was made of clear crystal, and light moved through him in strange patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Human Captain Minji of Earth," he began, "you stand accused of crimes against galactic peace." Minji lifted her chin higher. She would not show fear, even though her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Behind the Chancellor, she could see the other council members. The Hegemony Admiral looked like a giant insect with too many arms. The Alteran representative had blue skin and eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. "What crimes?" Minji asked, though she already knew the answer. The Chancellor's crystal body flashed brighter. "Your species has spread to 17 star systems in just 200 years. You build colonies without permission. You develop technologies that violate our treaties. You refuse to follow the rules that keep our galaxy safe." "We explore," Minji said simply. "We learn. We grow. These are not crimes." A laugh came from somewhere in the circle. It was the Hegemony Admiral, his insect mouth clicking as he spoke. "You consume everything you touch. You strip planets of resources. You multiply like a virus." Minji felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "We terraform dead worlds. We bring life to places that had none. We share our discoveries with anyone who asks." "You share weapons," the Chancellor said coldly. "Your humans gave faster-than-light travel to primitive species. You taught them to build ships that can cross the galaxy in days instead of years. This breaks the Technology Restriction Treaty." "Knowledge should be free," Minji replied. "Why should some species have advantages while others suffer?" The Alteran representative leaned forward. Her blue face showed something that might have been sadness. "Because, young human, some knowledge is dangerous. Some technologies can destroy entire worlds if used wrongly. So can fear," Minji shot back. "So can keeping others weak while you stay strong." The council chamber fell silent. Minji could hear her own breathing. She looked around at the 12 species that ruled most of the known galaxy. Each one was ancient. Each one was powerful. Each one was afraid of what humanity might become. The Chancellor raised one crystal hand. "Let the evidence be shown." Hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed human colonies spreading across the galaxy like dots of light. Each dot represented millions of people, families, children who just wanted to find new homes among the stars. "In 2 centuries, you have expanded faster than any species in galactic history," the Chancellor continued. "At this rate, you will outnumber all other species combined within 500 years. Is that a crime?" Minji asked. "Having families? Building homes? It is when you refuse to accept limits," the Hegemony Admiral clicked. "Every other species in this council learned to control their growth. We learned to be satisfied with what we had. You humans never stop wanting more." The hologram changed. Now it showed human ships, sleek and fast, moving between star systems. Then it showed human cities, sprawling and bright, covering entire continents. "You change everything you touch," the Alteran said softly. "You cannot leave things as they are. You must always build, always improve, always push forward." "Yes," Minji said, and for the first time she smiled. "That is what makes us human." The Chancellor's crystal body darkened. "That is what makes you dangerous," another council member spoke up. This one looked like a tree with eyes, its voice like rustling leaves. "We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. We did this by learning balance, by accepting our place, by not reaching for more than we can safely hold." "Your peace," Minji said, "is the peace of the grave. You have stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped dreaming of what you could become. We have stopped making the mistakes that destroy civilizations. the Chancellor replied coldly. The vote came, quickly. 12 voices spoke as one. Guilty on all charges. The sentence was death. Not just for Minji, not just for the human colonies, but for every human being in the galaxy. Complete orbital bombardment of Earth and all human settlements, the Chancellor announced. Memory wiping of any survivors. The human threat will be eliminated completely. As the guards moved toward her, Minji touched the small communicator hidden in her sleeve. She had one chance to send a final message to the hidden research station, where Dr. Hyunwoo and his team waited. Her fingers found the emergency transmit button. The message was short, just 3 words, but she hoped it would be enough. Remember who we were. The guards took her away as the council members began planning humanity's extinction. None of them suspected that those 3 words would change everything. The attack began at dawn on Earth. Dr. Hyunwoo watched from his hidden research station as the first chips appeared in the sky above his home planet. They were not just from one species, but from all 12 council members. The sky filled with so many ships that they blocked out the sun. Phase 1 is starting, he whispered into his communicator. His hands shook as he spoke. Below him, in the secret laboratories, his team was working faster than they had ever worked before. The bombardment was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Beams of pure energy fell from the sky like deadly rain. The great cities of Earth, New York, London, Tokyo, Seoul, disappeared in flashes of white light. Mountains melted, oceans boiled. Even the moon was not safe from the attack. Dr. Suman ran into the observation room, her face pale with fear and sadness. The genetic packages are ready, she said. All 47 worlds have been seeded. The carriers are already spreading the samples. Hyunwoo nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the screens showing Earth. His wife had lived there. His children had played in those parks that were now nothing but ash. How long do we have before they find us? The station is completely hidden, Suman replied. They think this is just empty space, but we need to go into deep sleep soon. The plan will take at least 50 years to work. On Earth, the bombardment continued for 3 full days. The council fleets took turns, making sure every inch of the planet was destroyed. They burned the forests, they cracked the ocean floors. They even destroyed the satellites that had carried human voices to the stars. Admiral Korthak of the Hegemony watched the destruction from his command ship. He felt no joy in this victory, only a cold satisfaction that a threat had been removed. But something was bothering him. Report on the human colonies, he ordered his lieutenant. The insect-like officer checked his screens. All colonies show 0 life signs, sir. No humans detected anywhere. That is impossible, Korthak said. We know they had settlements on 17 worlds. Where did they go? Unknown, sir. The colonies appear to have been abandoned weeks ago. No ships detected leaving, no distress signals. They just vanished. Korthak's compound eyes narrowed. He had been fighting wars for 200 years and he knew when something was wrong. Humans did not simply disappear. They fought. They ran. They hid. But they did not just vanish into nothing. On the research station, Dr. Hyunwoo prepared for the long sleep. His team had done their work well. The genetic samples were already spreading through the galaxy, carried by traders and diplomats who had no idea what they were carrying. Will it work? Asked Dr. Jiwon, the youngest member of their team. She was barely 30 years old and this was her first real mission. It has to work, Hyunwoo replied. We cannot fight them with ships or weapons. They are too strong. But we can fight them with something they will never expect. What? Ideas, Hyunwoo said simply. We are going to plant human ideas in their children, not with force but with genetics. They will carry our curiosity, our drive to explore, our refusal to accept limits. Jiwon looked confused. But how? Suman smiled sadly. We have been working on this for 50 years, ever since we knew the council was turning against us. We created a genetic virus that carries human traits. It spreads slowly, taking generations to show results. But once it starts, it cannot be stopped. The children of our enemies will become our greatest weapon. Hyunwoo added. They will remember things they never learned. They will dream of stars they have never seen. They will question everything their parents taught them. The preparation for deep sleep took hours. One by one, the team members entered their cryogenic pods. They would sleep for 50 years while their plan slowly spread across the galaxy. Meanwhile, the council was celebrating. Earth was gone. The human colonies were empty. The threat had been eliminated. The Zephyrian Chancellor addressed the galaxy on every communication channel. The human menace has been removed, he announced. Peace will return to our worlds. Order will be restored. But peace was not what came next. Within months, strange things began to happen. Archaeological sites appeared on dozens of worlds, sites that seemed to be older than any known civilization. The technology found there was unlike anything the Council species had ever seen. More troubling were the reports from different worlds. Young beings were showing unusual behavior. They asked questions their parents could not answer. They built things that should have been impossible for their species. They looked at the stars with a hunger that made their elders uncomfortable. The council members told themselves these were just coincidences. They had won. Humanity was extinct. Their genetic records were destroyed. Even the word human was being removed from every database in the galaxy. But Admiral Korthak could not shake his feeling that something was wrong. As he looked at the dead ashes that had once been Earth, he wondered if they had really won this war, or if they had just begun a much larger battle. In her cryogenic pod, Dr. Jiwon dreamed of children she would never meet, carrying gifts they would never understand on worlds she had never seen. The erasure was complete. The real fight was just beginning. 50 years had passed since Earth died. Dr. Taehyun sat in his laboratory on the Alteran homeworld, staring at test results that made no sense. The young Alteran in front of him was only 16 years old, but her genetic code showed impossible changes. Tell me again what you built, Taehyun said softly. The girl named Zara shifted nervously in her chair. Her blue skin was darker than normal Alterans and her eyes glowed brighter. I do not know how I did it. I just looked at our old transport ships and knew they could go faster. Faster how? I changed the engine design, made the energy flow in circles instead of straight lines. Now our ships can cross 3-star systems in 1 day instead of 1 week. Taehyun felt cold fear in his stomach. What she described was impossible. Her species had been using the same engine design for 1,000 years. No young Alteran should know how to improve it. Where did you learn this? Zara looked confused. I did not learn it. I just remembered it. Like remembering a dream. Similar reports were coming from all over the galaxy. On the hegemony worlds, young insects were building new types of weapons that their military engineers could not understand. On Zephyrian planets, crystal children were asking questions about space travel that made their elders uncomfortable. Dr. Velkor of the Zephyrian Science Council called an emergency meeting. We have a problem, he announced to his colleagues. Our young ones are changing. The other scientists looked at him with concern. Changing how? They think differently. They ask questions we cannot answer. Yesterday, my own daughter asked me why we stopped exploring new galaxies. I told her it was too dangerous. She asked me how we would know if we never tried. That is not how Zephyrians think, said another scientist. We value safety. We value order. We do not take unnecessary risks. Exactly, Velkor replied. But our children do. They want to explore. They want to experiment. They want to break rules and see what happens. The reports kept coming. Young beings across the galaxy were showing the same strange traits. They were curious about everything. They refused to accept simple answers. They wanted to build, to explore, to change things. Most disturbing of all were the archaeological discoveries. Dr. Karan of the Universal Science Institute had found 17 sites across different worlds. Each site contained ruins that were older than any known civilization. The technology is completely unknown, Koran reported to the Galactic Council. but it follows patterns that appear in the modifications our young people are making. Chancellor Veldon listened to the report with growing unease. You are saying these ancient ruins match the new inventions? Yes. It is as if someone planted instructions for our children to find. Instructions hidden in stone and metal, waiting for the right minds to understand them. On a forgotten research station at the edge of the galaxy, machines hummed quietly in the darkness. Inside a cryogenic chamber, Dr. Jiwan began to wake up. The 50-year sleep was ending. Her eyes opened slowly. The chamber filled with warm light as systems activated around her. She sat up carefully, her body stiff from the long sleep. Status report, she whispered to the computer. Phase 2 is complete, the artificial voice replied. Genetic integration shows 93% success rate across target populations. Archaeological sites have been discovered on 41 worlds. Behavioral modifications are appearing in the 3rd generation. Jiwan smiled. It had worked. The plan that she and Dr. Hyunwoo had created was succeeding beyond their hopes. She walked slowly to the observation deck. Through the great windows, she could see stars scattered like diamonds across space. Somewhere out there, children who had never heard of humanity were dreaming human dreams. Computer, wake the others, she ordered. One by one, her team emerged from their long sleep. Dr. Suman was the first to join her on the observation deck. The reports? Suman asked. Better than we hoped, Jiwan replied. The genetic modifications are stable. The archaeological sites are being found exactly as planned. The council species are starting to panic. Dr. Hyunwoo joined them, moving slowly, but with excitement in his eyes. Show me the data. They spent hours reviewing the reports. The genetic virus they had created 50 years ago was working perfectly. It spread slowly from parent to child, carrying human traits hidden in alien DNA. The children born with these modifications were not human, but they thought like humans. They question authority, Suman observed, reading through behavior reports. They want to explore unknown places. They refuse to accept that something cannot be done. They are becoming what we were, Hyunwoo said proudly. Not human in body, but human in spirit. The archaeological sites were the second part of their plan. Before Earth died, human scientists had placed hidden installations on dozens of worlds. These sites contained no weapons, no ships, no obvious technology. Instead, they held something much more powerful. Ideas. Each site was designed to be discovered by young minds with human-like curiosity. The ruins contained puzzles that could only be solved by beings who thought like humans. Once solved, they revealed new technologies, new ways of thinking, new possibilities. How long before they realize what we did? Jiwan asked. Hyunwoo looked at the star chart showing affected worlds. Soon. The council is already asking questions, but it is too late to stop it now. The seeds have grown into trees. The trees are bearing fruit. Across the galaxy, young beings were beginning to remember things they had never learned and dream of possibilities their species had never imagined. Lieutenant Kyung-soo stood in front of his Zephyrian commander, trying to explain something that made no sense. His crystal body flickered with nervous energy as he spoke. Sir, I modified the ship engines last night. I know I was not supposed to, but I had this dream about how to make them faster. Commander Zalak's crystal form darkened with anger. You had a dream? About engineering? That is impossible. Zephyrians do not dream about technology. But I did, sir. And it worked. The ship can now travel twice as fast as before. Zalak stared at the young officer. Kyung-soo was only 25 years old, barely out of the academy. He should not know anything about advanced engine design. Yet the test results were clear. The modifications worked perfectly. Where did you learn this? Zalak demanded. Kyung-soo looked confused. I did not learn it anywhere. I just knew it, like remembering something I had forgotten. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On hegemony worlds, young officers were developing new battle tactics that their generals had never seen. On Alterran planets, teenagers were solving mathematical problems that had puzzled scientists for centuries. Commander Nara of the Hegemony Fleet was having her own problems. Her insect-like body trembled with frustration as she read the latest reports. "Explain this to me again," she said to her aide. "How did a group of Academy students capture an entire enemy base without firing a single shot?" "They talked to the enemy soldiers, ma'am. Convinced them to surrender. Used something they called negotiation tactics." Nara's compound eyes narrowed. "We do not negotiate. We fight. We conquer. We do not talk our enemies into giving up." "Yes, ma'am. But it worked. The young beings were organizing themselves. They called themselves the Inheritors, though none of them could say exactly what they were inheriting. They met in secret, sharing ideas and techniques that seemed to come from nowhere. Dr. Taehyun was studying this phenomenon more closely than anyone else. He had been tracking the genetic changes for months, and what he found terrified him. The modifications are not random, he reported to the Alterran Science Council. They follow a specific pattern. Someone designed this. "Designed what?" asked the council leader. "The changes in our children. They are not natural evolution. Someone created a genetic virus that spreads through reproduction. It carries specific traits: curiosity, problem-solving ability, resistance to authority." The council members looked at each other with growing alarm. "Who would do such a thing?" Taehyun hesitated. "The pattern matches old data files from before the Great Cleansing, files about a species that was eliminated 50 years ago." "That is impossible," the council leader said firmly. "That species was completely destroyed. Every record was deleted." "Not every record," Taehyun replied quietly. Meanwhile, on the hidden research station, Dr. Jiwon was preparing for the most dangerous part of their plan. She stood before a massive communications array, ready to broadcast to the entire galaxy. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Hyunwoo asked. "Once we reveal ourselves, there will be no going back." Jiwon nodded. "The children need to know the truth. They need to understand what they are becoming." Dr. Suman activated the transmitter, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Every communication device in the galaxy will receive this message." Jiwon took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Dr. Jiwon. I am speaking to you from a research station that your councils believe does not exist. I am one of the last members of a species that was erased from your history 50 years ago. Across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. The message was being translated into every known language automatically. We were called humans. We came from a planet called Earth. Your councils decided we were too dangerous to live, so they destroyed our world and killed our people. On Zephyria, Chancellor Veldon nearly dropped his crystal ceremonial staff. This is impossible. The humans are extinct." "But they could not kill our ideas," Jiwon continued. "Before we died, we planted seeds in your children, not to harm them but to give them gifts. The gift of curiosity, the gift of imagination, the gift of refusing to accept that something cannot be done." Lieutenant Kyung-soo heard the broadcast, in his quarters. Suddenly everything made sense: the dreams, the strange knowledge, the feeling that he was meant for something more than following orders. "You call yourselves the Inheritors," Jiwon said. "You are inheriting our legacy. Our drive to explore, to question, to grow. Your parents fear these traits because they threaten the old ways." Commander Nara listened to the broadcast with a mixture of horror and understanding. Her own daughter had been asking strange questions lately. Questions about why they fought so many wars. Questions about whether there might be better ways to solve problems. "We are not asking you to become human," Jiwon continued. "We are asking you to become more than what you were. To use the gifts we gave you to build something better than the galaxy your parents created." The broadcast ended, but its effects spread like ripples across space. Young beings everywhere began to understand what they were feeling. They were not broken or strange or wrong. They were awakening. Chancellor Veldon called an emergency council meeting. "We have a problem," he announced. "The human infection has spread further than we thought." What do you mean? Asked Admiral Korthak. I mean, Veldon said grimly, that our own children are becoming human. Commander Dongmin stood at the center of the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber. His body was Alteran, with blue skin and glowing eyes, but something about him was different. He moved with confidence that made the older council members uncomfortable. Behind him stood representatives from every world in the galaxy, young, beings who carried the same strange spark in their eyes. Chancellor Veldon, now ancient and tired, looked down at the gathering. His crystal body had grown dim with age and worry. What do you want from us? He asked. Dongmin smiled, and it was a very human smile even though he had never been human. We want recognition. We want the right to exist without hiding. We want to build something better than what came before. You are abominations, spat Admiral Korthak from his seat. Genetic mistakes that should never have been created. We are your children, replied Commander Nara, stepping forward. She was hegemony, but her insect-like features showed none of the cold aggression her species was known for. We are what you made us when you tried to destroy what you feared. Dr. Yunji walked slowly into the chamber. She was one of the last original humans, now 90 years old but still sharp. The entire council fell silent as she approached. Most of them had never seen a real human before. I watched you destroy my world, she said quietly. I watched you kill my people, but I also watched you spread our greatest gift across the galaxy without even knowing it. Chancellor Veldon's crystal form flickered. You poisoned our children. We gave them freedom, Yunji replied. The freedom to think, the freedom to question, the freedom to imagine something better than what their parents built. The evidence was everywhere around them. The inheritors had grown from a small group of confused young beings into a movement that spanned billions of people across hundreds of worlds. They had built new technologies, created new art, solved problems that had puzzled their species for centuries. Lieutenant Kyung-soo stepped forward. I am Zephyrian, he said, but I am also something more. I dream of stars I have never seen. I build things my teachers said were impossible. I ask questions that make my parents afraid. Similar voices rose from across the chamber. A young hegemony, engineer who had invented peaceful ways to settle conflicts. An Alteran artist who painted images of worlds that did not exist, but somehow felt like home. A crystalline poet who wrote about the beauty of change and growth. We are not trying to replace you, said Dr. Minho, one of the inheritor leaders. We are trying to complete you, to add what was missing. Chancellor Veldon was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What you describe, it goes against everything we have built. For 3,000 years we maintained peace through order, through everyone knowing their place and staying in it. And what did that peace cost you? Asked Dr. Yunji. When did you last discover something new? When did you last explore an unknown star? When did you last grow as a civilization? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. The galaxy had been peaceful, but it had also been stagnant. Nothing had changed in centuries. Nothing had grown. Your peace, continued Dongmin, was the peace of the grave, beautiful and quiet and completely lifeless. Young beings throughout the galaxy were watching this conversation on every communication device. They waited to see if their future would be one of freedom or fear. Dr. Taehyun, who had first discovered the genetic modifications, stood up from his seat in the observers section. I have studied what these young beings have become, he announced. They are not dangerous, they are not destructive, they are better. Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. This was the scientist who had first warned about the human infection. Better how? Demanded Admiral Korthak. They solve problems instead of fighting about them. They explore instead of hiding. They create instead of just maintaining what already exists. They have taken the best parts of each of our species and added something new. The vote was called at dawn. For the first time in galactic history, the young beings were allowed to participate, not just as observers but as equals. The question was simple. Would the galaxy accept the new hybrid civilization that had emerged from humanity's ashes? Or would it try to destroy this change as it had destroyed the humans? The count took hours. When it was finished, Chancellor Veldon announced the result with a voice that shook with emotion. The motion passes. The inheritors are recognized as full citizens of the galactic community. Cheers erupted throughout the chamber and across the galaxy. But the celebration was not one of victory over enemies. It was the celebration of a family coming together. Dr. Yunji smiled as she watched young beings of dozens of species embrace each other. Earth was gone, the original humans were extinct. But their greatest creation, the idea that any being should be free to grow and explore and become more than they were, had become the foundation of a new galactic order. "We did it," Dr. Jiwan whispered, tears streaming down her aged face. "We actually did it." The Council erased humanity's body, but in doing so, they had ensured that humanity's soul would live forever in the stars. The young beings who had never seen Earth carried its dreams in their hearts and its courage in their genes. Humanity was dead. But humanity lived on, scattered like seeds across the galaxy, growing into something larger and more beautiful than anyone had ever imagined possible.